Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Leafwire's Industry Trailblazers, where we speak with and learn from some of the industry's true pioneers. Today, I'm happy to welcome Terry Mendez from Safe Harbor Financial. Terry is a transformative executive that combines business acumen with extensive experience with both SEC registrants and private companies across multiple disciplines. He's served in management roles with both single-state and multi-state cannabis operators. He's got a verifiable record of success in developing top-performing collaborative teams, instilling a culture of transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement. And along those lines, very exciting, Terry was recently appointed as the new CEO at Safe Harbor Financial, and it's a great honor for us to have you here with us today. Terry, welcome, and talk about.
Well, thank you first of all, Mike, for having me. This is a wonderful opportunity, and I appreciate you having me on your show.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I love your shirt too, by the way.
Yeah, we loves everyone.
So maybe you just really briefly talk first about what led you to the cannabis industry. How did you get into the industry?
So I had just left Hitachi, a $100 billion organization where I was building and running a virtualization business, as well as being their chief accounting officer type person. And I was working in my own consulting practice for a moment, and Cohn Resnick calls me up, and they're good in the cannabis industry, and they said, we need some help in really turning around a cannabis operator. And I initially said no. I said, look, my entire family is in the church. I have deacons, I have pastors, I have all sorts of folks, and I don't know that I can do that. But I called over to our patriarch of the family, and I said, what do you think? And he said, as long as you pay your tithes, you're good to go. So I jumped into the industry.
That's great.
So I jumped into the industry at a single state operator that was losing money. We turned it around, and we really did something special here in Colorado. And what I had done at the time, or what I was doing, is transformation. It wasn't so much about I needed to own the process, but I needed to give you back a healthier company. And that's what we did. We gave him back a healthier company, me and my team, and went on to the next adventure. And I've been in cannabis ever since. So this will be year 6, I believe, in the cannabis industry, almost 90% of my time.
Fantastic. Well, hey, congrats on your new role at Safe Harbor. This is really big, earth-shattering news in the industry. Maybe you could talk about the situation that you're encountering at Safe Harbor and the challenges you're facing there.
Yeah, sure. So just interesting how I got here. By the way, networking works. I happened to sit next to Sunday, who was our former CEO, and we at a dinner at a Vail conference, and we got into talking. She asked me if I knew about Safe Harbor, and I said no, so your marketing must not be working. So she laughed, and we got into talking about being a public company executive. She asked me for some help thereafter. Did some consulting work and really looked at their assets differently than how they were looking at it. I was looking at their assets and saying, what can I build upon versus how do I fix or refine what I already have? And they knew already how to fix and refine and make it better, and every year continuously improve the base business, the core business. But we're sitting on, and I'll tell you, $25 billion of transactions have been processed on their platform. And I looked at that and said, that's a heck of a running head start. LinkedIn didn't even have that type of running head start. Right? To build something that you can actually leverage into a platform where cannabis-related businesses can go to and find ways to lower their cost of production. And so as I looked at this, I said, guys, while you have a wonderful platform where your customers are the financial institutions and your clients are the cannabis-related businesses, there's more we can do for cannabis-related businesses, and that's where you can grow, and that's where you can prosper. The banking side is phenomenally competitive, and we offer some really interesting solutions. And yes, they should do a better job marketing this because what you have is special. But that's an easier fix than building. And let's build something that will sustain us for the next 10 years. So I look at this as a moment that matters, an inflection point for the organization to actually invest in what the cannabis industry needs right now, which are options to lower the cost of production when everything else is so expensive.
Wow, that's a big lift.
It's been fun.
Well, this is really a perfect segue then to my next question, which is talk about the overall state of cannabis banking and the types of challenges that are confronting businesses of all kinds in our industry.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the industry as a whole first, right? And then we'll get into the banking piece. We just closed a year that we did about 34, depends on what analyst report you talk about, but about $34 billion in the US, with a growth rate a little over 11%, predicting to be $75 billion by 2030. That's a tremendous growth rate. The challenge in the industry is we have tremendous headwinds. I call it the perfect storm. There's high inflation, high interest rates, illicit drugs, alternatives to marijuana coming across the border. There are things right now that are challenges that don't allow us fully to take capability that we built post 2020 and grow facilities. And what you see is that capability now being shut down and people closing grows or closing sections of their facility. There's a lot of potential in those areas. And if we can hit those potentials and we can see some movement in alleviating some of those pain points, that would be great. That's outside of regulatory change. That's living with 280E. The States Act is something else that's out there that could also be very, very helpful and has some momentum on it, where safer banking may never see the light of day. I saw something today from the Dales report that said, Chuck Schumer never got it out of his drawer. That's kind of a true statement. I can't say that's not right, or that's not right. That's not wrong. And so the anticipation and what we need to do as an industry is build for what is today, and then when the regulations change, be prepared to adopt the opportunity and ride that wave. But the investment banking on that regulatory change hasn't proven to be, worthwhile. As it relates to banking, when I look at it, when I first got into this industry, I said, what in the world is going on here? Right? I think I was banking with Champion Bank, and they were charging me $1,500 a month, and I had to drive up to something that looked like a closed Taco Bell with a metal drawer to drop money in the box and hope that money hit my bank account. When I got a wire transfer, I got 15 phone calls. Did you really want to send this wire transfer out? And if I didn't pick up one of those 15 phone calls, the wire died in the stream. So the banking modernization has occurred over the last years. I believe Safe Harbor has been at the forefront of that. We actually have a very modern platform for people to take advantage of, but it needs to go beyond banking. When I look at the platform, I say, hey, we're doing a great job here. My biggest issue is people knowing that we exist. We're in 41 states and territories. We're everywhere. But does everyone know we exist? And the issue is we're kind of like that online bank solution where, you see us on LinkedIn, you might see us on Leafwire, you might see us on some of these other platforms, but you don't see us at your local grassroots association meeting. And so I have to fix those things so that people see and feel us and know who we are and say, I get it. And how do we make it easy for them to bank with Safe Harbor? And how do we make their problems my problem? And the more I can take on your problems, the more unexpected services you're going to feel a difference coming in banking with Safe Harbor.
That's great. So just a little aside here, and probably a whole conversation by itself, but have you seen some of the 280E workarounds that are currently being litigated? And what's your overall impression of some of the things that primarily the MSOs are doing?
Yeah, so there's a couple. There's 471C, which allows a smaller business, I believe under $25 million, to put more money into cost of goods sold. And because you're not doing anything federally illegal until you actually distribute cannabis, the cost of goods sold is deductible. And so I've seen folks on the smaller side, under 25 million, effectively do that. Just had a conversation yesterday with a group that was employee stock ownership plan. And so that's another model that's out there that's allowing people to be successful, and also, employees to own portions of cannabis organizations while avoiding that 280E tax. So there are strategies, but at the end of the day, the government today is the largest lender to the cannabis industry, right? And so the tax bills are out there. People are, and have used that as a cheaper form of capital. I'd rather pay interest and penalties rather than pay 15 or 20% on the third-party debt.
Huh. Wow. Oh. That's okay. Yeah, that is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, thank you.
It doesn't hurt that I was, I'm a CPA in 3 states. I know some of this stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's nice to know you're putting that certification to use. Great. Okay. Well, so yeah, next question. Maybe when you talk to a cannabis company, what are some basic what's some basic advice that you give to cannabis companies to be successful in this, in the face of all these obstacles and headwinds as you describe them?
Sure. And, I've been advising in the space for a while. And usually I start with, do you know who your customer is? How many of our growers think the customer is the end user of the product? The customer is not the end user of the product if you're a wholesale grower. The dispensary partner is your customer. They're the people paying your bill. If you're an extractor, the dispensary partner is the person paying your bill. And if you understand that every single dispensary is its own ecosystem, even with an MSO, a dispensary in Michigan owned by the same person that has a dispensary in New Mexico or Arizona, those dispensaries feel different. They're catering to a different clientele. It's not necessarily the same thing as a McDonald's. You go everywhere and you get exactly the same things, right? Because of the state situations where you can't actually have exactly the same things in every state, right?
Yeah.
And so understanding your dispensary partners and actually putting them in pods, which is one of the ways that I help my single state operator change the world for them, is put them in pods and say, these are ones that seem to go after the same customer base. What do you want me to grow, right? How much of it do you need? Can I be able to devise a strategy for pods of customers that really differentiate you from your competitors? Because if you're a commodity, and, a lot of times the cultivators look at their weed as commodities. I mean, everybody has the best weed, which means everybody's weed is the same. And so, right? And so if you're a commodity, what are you doing to make your dispensary's life, easy? Some take the approach of, I need a menu of everything. I need high grade to low grade weed. I need extraction products. I need joints. I need this, that, and the other. So when I walk in, I can sell them everything. That's a good strategy. Yes, not everybody can do it or afford it. So what's going to be your strategy to differentiate your value proposition to your customer? So that's, one thing I talk about is let's understand your customer at a very deep level. And of course, the end user is important, but it's only important if you're aligning that with your customer strategy. And then I talk to people about the conservation of cash. Access to capital has always been hard. It's harder today than it was 5 years ago. But being judicious with your cash and actually showing and demonstrating to an investor how you've been more successful than the next person in the judicious use of that cash and return on equity and return on investment value. I tell people, think about it in terms of eights. If I'm going to hire a controller and that person costs me 120 grand a year, right? Okay, how many eights do you have to sell in order to get value from that controller? And the sales price isn't the right price. It's the profit that you get from the sale, right? So really, how many eights do you have to sell in order to get, comfortable with that 120, 150 grand a year controller, right? What's the return on the investment? What is the problem the controller is going to fix? And is it worth the sales effort? And if you say yes, great. What's that return and what's that payback? That's how you tell that story. I do not make a decision unless I understand the sales effort necessary to fund that decision. And once that decision is funded, then I move forward. Even if it's a credit, most of the time you're hiring a financial person because some debt agreement or some person says, I'm not going to give you money unless you have this. Okay, add that to the cost of that debt. If you're taking out a $5 million loan and it's at 5% interest and you have a $150,000 guy that's required because of that, that's part of your interest rate. And let's talk about what it really costs you to carry that debt, especially when you're then thinking about how do I pass that along to my customer and price my products.
Well, this is, again, perfect segue. This is, you alluded to your early experiences with cannabis banks. And now, clearly there are some players out there, some good cannabis banks out there that have been solving some problems. But yeah, what's unique about Safe Harbor and the way you approach cannabis banking? What sets Safe Harbor apart?
Sure. So when I first started, we were going through a transition where one of our financial institutions decided to exit the cannabis business for whatever reason. So they had hundreds upon hundreds of cannabis-related businesses on that particular platform. We transitioned them onto another financial institution. We made it our problem. It wasn't their problem to go find another financial institution. It was our problem to partner with you to get to the end of the day successful solution. We're doing that also with cashless ATM, ACH-based ATM, closed loop and open loop systems. And so every time we refer someone into someone, right, we own that with you. We've helped you get to that person. And if that person is not successful for some reason or another, I want to have a bank of people I've already vetted to say, we're going to help you move from point A to point B. Not many people know even to do that, right? When we are run and operated by someone who was a cannabis operator, who held an owner's badge, we have a very different perspective on what great service could look like. And I'm building some of the infrastructure, but one day I want to be able to take some of that risk, that $150,000 controller, and help move it into a low-cost center of excellence to allow you the opportunity to focus on your grow, on your extraction, on your joint rolling operation, on your kitchen, whatever it is you're doing. That's what you love and want to do. You don't want to do HR. You don't want to do IT. You don't want to do accounting and finance. So if I can pull that from you, great. I want the world to know that they should be calling Safe Harbor for every issue they're facing. Let me be part of your risk management assessment. Let me think about your problems with you, and let's bring solutions to the table that are sustainable for the entire ecosystem. And as we build those solutions, think about really cementing a strong middle market cannabis operator. It's going to be hard in the coming years if we don't do this for the single state operators really to survive in nearly every market. And those are very important aspects of the business. And so I want to make sure that I, not only focusing on our best MSOs out there, but I'm also focusing on making sure the single state operators have access to success and access to talent and access to sustainable banking, access to lending products. That's my focus.
Sounds great. It's helping me also just to think about how Leafwire helps people as well. And I love to hear that. It's all about our partnerships as well.
Yes.
I'm also curious, Terry, just here's another kind of left field question. What's your feeling about vertical integration and the importance of vertical integration when it comes, whether you're an SSO or an MSO or even a multi-country operator? Do you see vertical integration as an important aspect of success? Just curious what your view is on that.
Initially, I was very skeptical of vertical integration as a strategy, because vertical integration as a strategy requires you to be great at multiple things. You got to be a great cultivator. You got to be great at extraction. You need to know how to bake something in the kitchen. Right?
Yep.
You need to know how to make the cookies, right?
Yeah, it's very multidisciplinary, right?
So you have all these disciplines.
Yeah.
And my initial hesitation was leadership in cannabis organizations were really focused on growing great weed. Right. And so I knew I can grow great weed, but now I need to bake something, or I have to extract something, or I got to do something different. And the initial push to vertical integration, a lot of that failed, right, because of those types of situations. But I think people have now solved that need and know that if you're going to have a kitchen, you need a chef. If you're going to have an extraction facility, you need to know you need to have an expert in that. And the marketing of those things individually is such a different animal. The way you market, joints and weed is very different than you market a vape pen, very different than you market an edible. Your positioning and competition within each one of those verticals are strong. And so now you have this capability, you're going to feed your dispensaries. And as you're feeding your dispensaries, you make one of two potential mistakes. Right? One mistake is feeding only your dispensaries. So your product is only found in your dispensaries, and it's 80% of what you sell, and you have no other options. So you walk into CVS and you only get CVS brand and you don't have anybody else's brand. I can't find NyQuil. I got ZZ Quill or whatever else that weird thing is. Right? Right. So, becomes a challenge at the dispensary level. So while you're trying to solve the excess capacity and the utilization of your facility, you're creating a new problem at the dispensary level, and then you can only market your stuff. You're not really, enticed to market anybody else's stuff. So your customer, which is for the dispensary, I'm saying your vendors for the dispensary, yourself, and whoever else you allow on your shelf. Right? And that's an art all to itself. And so now you need a lot of expensive people that know how to, do artwork across all of those different things and make sure you don't produce excess inventory. So it's really, really hard. I do think people have now solved this. And so it's becoming like once somebody figures out how to make a jet, everyone figures out how to make a jet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, but it's not inexpensive. It requires a lot of money and talent, people, technologies, and the technologies are just not where they need to be. The technology I have running a CPG company that's not in the cannabis industry is different than the technology I have at my fingertips in the technology in the cannabis space. And so you have a technology issue and a people issue. And again, cannabis sometimes is, hard to find people willing to jump in that are super educated, artists, also want to be in the cannabis industry. You're asking for, the unicorns of the world to step up. And again, people have found the unicorns and people are being successful there. So I'm not going to knock vertical integration, but the initial kind of models didn't work very well.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. Well, yeah. So this is usually how we've been closing these is just to get from you your take about where we are overall as an industry. What's your? I mean, you're still here. You're still in the industry. So that's a positive sign. But maybe you could just talk about how do you see the state of the industry over the next 5 to 10 years?
We're gonna grow. We're gonna grow rapidly. I'm optimistic that while we can all have different political views, that lowering interest rates, lowering inflation, and managing the ability for illicit alternative to come over the border will be positive for our industry. We're seeing people get their the COVID checks that they were promised. So you're seeing that money come into the industry, which is going to be helpful to ancillary ability to have access to capital. As the interest rates come down, what's happening with interest rates is if I'm up to, there's risk-free rates of like 4.5%. I can get 4.5% with totally no risk. So if you're going to jump into a risky industry, you're going to want a lot higher interest rate in order to compensate you for the risk that you're taking. And in between, there's things like commercial real estate that are less risky, but also provide you a nice return. And so that access to capital, once that starts, once that dynamic changes, those companies that are prepared and can show the judicious use of capital during this hardship time will win the access to capital gain and will be able to chase new growth opportunities. And we're not fully out there yet. We're doing business in 41 states and territories. But there's plenty of states where rec isn't legal yet, where medical is not legal yet, and there's countries out there that are just at the middle of figuring out what they want to do. And we're taking a look at international capabilities and where we can fit in for people that want to bank in or want to do business and import into the U.S. Maybe Safe Harbor has a role in that in the future. And it's exciting to see countries like Germany and others, start taking off. So I'm optimistic to see that some of the excess, if we figure out some of these rules, we've built massive capabilities and capacities. When those open back up and we can ship that stuff internationally, there's a whole new set of, opportunity for people to take advantage of.
Fantastic. Well, yeah. I think we got to handle schedule 1 before we can do that, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll see. But that's like build for now and just prepare for tomorrow, but build for now.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's really illuminating, Terry. I've learned a lot from this conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time, and best of luck.
Thank you.
With Safe Harbor. We're looking forward to seeing all your success coming forward.
Appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I think this is going to be a fun thing where we're taking something that has all the right ingredients, building the cornerstone, and then building out from there.
Fantastic. Well, take care and we'll talk again soon.
Appreciate it. Take care.